empathy?
I was just working with a group of adults, and we were talking about listening with understanding and empathy, and how hard it is for us to listen in order to understand before we start jumping in, interrupting, or saying what we want to say. K-12 has to change in order for higher education to change, and vice versa.
I am so honored and so thankful to have Bena Kallick, the co-founder of the Institute of Habits of Mind, with me here today. Bena has over 50 years of experience in education. She has taught at Yale and at the University of Massachusetts. She started off by establishing a teacher center and a children museum, which came to be known for its development of thinking. And I believe it's this element of thinking that really inspired Bena to start the thinking movement. Bena is also an education consultant, and she has collaborated with many schools across the world in trying to bring reforms in the education system so that it becomes more of a learning experience than just a performance-oriented one. Bena has also written many books on education. So thank you, Bena, for giving me your precious time and for being with me here today. And please tell us, what are the habits of mind and how can parents and educators of a developing country like Pakistan learn the habits of mind?
Well, the first thing I would say, thank you so much for inviting me. And I'd say that the habits of mind are basically what we would call dispositions, meaning it's your attitude. It's the way that you kind of look at things. It's not your personality. It's more the way you have an attitude of kind of either openness or whether you feel like things are shutting down, for example. So what Art Costa and I in our work did was we started thinking about what are the habits of mind, the dispositions that you need in order to be a thoughtful person. And certainly in today's world, to be a thoughtful person is terribly important. But we found over the past 35 years that we've been working with this, that it's always been the case that we need to be thoughtful. But now, more than ever, I think we're problem solving. We're needing to always be asking ourselves, what would be the most thoughtful thing that I could do right now? So one of the things that we talk about is the idea that the habits of mind are what we call habits, meaning that they can be developed. It can become a habit. So it means that you can say in your mind that I really want to be persisting with this. Persisting is one of our habits. So you might say, I really want to be persisting with this. I need to stick with it. I shouldn't give up right now. That's what goes on inside my mind. And then the next thing that I would do is I would say, well, if that goes on inside my mind and I'm saying I need to persist, that's my disposition, I need to persist, what skills do I need in order to be able to persist? So just saying it isn't enough. I really need to now think about what strategies or what skills can I use that will help me to stick with it when it's really tough. So generally speaking, what we do when we work with people, for example, students in a classroom, one of the things we'll do is we'll say, think of a time when you really stuck with something. And kids have many, many examples. Now, unfortunately, some of the examples aren't academic. They're not like, I really stick with a math problem when it's tough. But they will say, I really stick with learning how to skateboard when it's difficult, or roller skating, or riding a bike. In other words, I think very often kids in their performances find that they do a lot of persisting. So we try to get them to understand what strategies they use when they do so. So for example, when you're learning how to ride a bike, you may ask somebody older to help you with that. So you get a resource, somebody to help you. That helps you to stick with it. Maybe if you fall off, you say to yourself, oh, that's not so bad, I can try again. So you encourage yourself. You say something to yourself, or somebody else says to you, come on, you can do it, it's okay. So that you begin to realize that it's really not that hard if you persist. And then you say, for example, well, also in riding the bike, I didn't learn today, but if I just walk away from it and come back tomorrow, maybe I'll be able to do it. So you set a goal for yourself. and you come back tomorrow and you do it. And gradually you find that you're able to ride the bike. And then you feel the pleasure of that. And you say, wow, sticking with it, that really paid off. So you see the benefit of it. So that's just one of the habits, but it's the way a habit begins to develop. So we've named 16. Persisting is one. Thinking flexibly is one. Managing impulsivity is one. So I'm not going to name all 16 for you, but they are all habits that say, when I want to be a more thoughtful person and I want to be able to perform in a thoughtful way, here is a habit that I might need to call upon.
Yes, definitely. And I am also reading your book, which is Learning and Leading with the Habits of Mind. And trust me, my favorite habit is finding humor and wonderment and awe. And I think that is so important, finding humor, because the way it states in the book, it's so beautiful of how it's explained that these days humor is so much, there's such a misconception. Children and even adults, they take humor in a different way. It's not you're not able to laugh at yourself, or find fun in your own failures and all of that. What would you like to say about that?
Well, I think we all know that when we laugh, it helps us to breathe. It relieves some of the tension. When we're in a group and things seem very, very difficult, you'll find that somebody will say something that's funny, everybody laughs, and you get right back to work and you feel differently about it. Finding humor is really one of the most important things also in terms of recognizing humor, knowing when somebody is kidding, knowing when someone is telling a joke, because very often people don't recognize that and they get very upset when in fact people are teasing, they're working, they're playing, and it's that playfulness that brings out a more innovative mind.
That's so true, Ben. I totally agree. And I also would like to ask you, Bena, that in a developing country like Pakistan, majority of the parents and educators, they all believe that schools and education is all about grades, performing, and then which is eventually about higher education and finding better jobs. So, how can the habits of mind be incorporated into the curriculum so that our parents and our educators learn that this is the right way of learning?
How do we really bring habits of mind into the schools, bring them to our children and to our parents so that they understand that this is part of the way that we're going to survive, really, is what I would say. We're going to survive in a world. And I think now that we're in the middle of this pandemic, we recognize that we are in it together. It's a global community, and that we really have to learn how to understand one another and how to be thoughtful in understanding one another. So to me, the habits of mind are important in so many ways. So one of the first ways is it helps you to give meaning to the learning. So it's one thing to memorize facts. It's another thing to really think about them and understand what they mean. So I can say, oh, I think the people in Pakistan are very different from the people in the United States. That may be a fact, but it's not sufficient. So in what ways are they different would be my first question. And then I would say, my second question would be, and in what ways are we alike? How do we really have things in common? And how do we see that our differences might be our strengths? It might be that because we're different, we think differently, and we may come up with some new ideas that we never thought of before. So it's really helping our children learn to live in a very diverse world with many, many cultures and many languages in a very global, interdependent way. And how do we make certain that they feel that their worth, that their value is as good as anybody's value, that it doesn't matter what country you come from, or where you are learning. What does matter is that you're open to learning and that you're open to hearing other people's perspectives, and that you say, I know that what I know may be very interesting, but if I think flexibly, which is one of the habits, it means that I would be also interested in what you know and what you can teach me. So I think that that whole idea that school is a place for learning, not just memorizing, and that it means that we have to keep giving more and more meaning to what we're learning, because this world requires us now to be more problem solving, to be more innovating, to be able to come up with solutions to some very, very difficult problems. And the way that I believe we will do that is while we learn together and we remain open to always learning. So one of our habits is called remaining open to continuous learning, opening our minds. Now, I think for parents, it's the same thing, because parents are probably in workplaces where the demands of the workplace are so different. It used to be perhaps that the demands were more things you could do with your hands. And now a lot of the demands are, what can you do with your mind? How do you really solve problems? How do you use technology more imaginatively? How do you code? How do you do all the things that are really required in this incredibly internet-connected world? And so with that, we know that as parents, our workplaces require us to use our minds as much as to use our physical bodies. And therefore, schools have to help us. And as parents, we have to be open to learning right alongside our children, because sometimes they can lead the way, because they're not afraid of new technologies. They're not afraid of new ideas, because they don't have all the traditions that we have. And it doesn't mean that the traditions aren't valuable, but we do have to understand that opening our minds will open our hearts and we will learn.
That is so beautiful what you said, Bena. I totally agree about the fact that these habits of mind will eventually make the people, make the children across the world more tolerant. And that is really the future of how this world and how the human beings are going to survive, by being more open, by being more acceptable to the different cultures, to the different people across the world. And I think this is so true that, children and parents must learn the habits of mind. So, Bena,
Yes.
what do you think? What is the future of education? And what is the future of higher education? Is it going to be the same, or is it going to change now?
I think that it's going to be very different. I think higher education is going to be very different. I think we are going to have more opportunities for students to be able to do field work, to be able to go out and to work right alongside people who are doing the work, so that we have more. I think in a way it's back to go forward, but in a way I think we need to have more apprenticeships. We need to have more mentoring. We have to have more opportunities to work right alongside people who are doing the work. I think that there's a place for learning and theory, but then it should be applied as quickly as possible. So when we say that, for example, we want students to become engineers, which is a very popular thing right now, we want engineers. Well, there's a certain amount that you can learn with simulation, with being able to think about what it means to be an engineer, but there is nothing like working right along somebody who is an engineer and learning directly from them. So it's what I would call a cognitive apprenticeship. It's an apprenticeship of the mind. It's like, how do you think when you do that? When you solve that problem, don't just show me how to solve the problem. Show me how you think when you're solving the problem, because that will help me to become a better thinker. And that doesn't happen in a lecture. That doesn't happen in a seminar, both of which are very fine. But it does happen when you're really able to work right alongside people who are doing the kind of work that you really feel you would like to do. In addition to that, I feel that probably we're going to have different certifications, as we're beginning to have now. So that if you wanted to become a programmer, for example, you may not have to go to college at all. Your higher education may be a certification program where you get put in certain hours, you get certifications that say you're qualified to do this work. And we may really find that as we strengthen what we do K-12, in terms of making sure that we're giving students more opportunities to stretch and expand their minds, the higher education will look different, because we will have students coming in with different capacities, different strengths, and different ways of thinking.
Yeah, so considering this fact, and I believe it is so true, and I think that this is so important for the youth of Pakistan as well. So, what changes should the schools of a developing country make right away so that when a child is done K-12 and by the time he knows he has made a mind or he has developed a passion that I want to be a programmer or I want to be an interior designer. So what are the changes the schools should make right now, ASAP, as you can say?
I think that the schools have to really begin to think about, and I am working in other developing countries, so I have seen this. And I think that a lot of schools in developing countries continue to have a heavy routine of memorizing, of really asking students to memorize the facts, to be able to do that. I think that they have to change as much as possible to helping kids to learn how to be better thinkers. I think when you put your emphasis on thinking, you're already changing what you do, so that you're beginning to say skills are important. You have to learn to read. You have to learn to write. You have to learn mathematics. I'm not saying that you don't have to learn that, but I am saying that students have to have the opportunity to also apply that in situations so that you can say, I need to learn mathematics and I need to use mathematics to solve this interesting problem about climate change. I need to think about with climate change, and I see all this data that tells me that there's a change in the weather, for example, and the weather patterns. I need to take science, I need to take mathematics, I need to take that and apply it and say, how does this help me understand this problem? What am I seeing about graphs? How do I learn to read data? How do I begin to apply what I'm learning? So I would say that probably if the early years all the way through begin to help children learn the context, the application, the ways that these things are important, then they can also be encouraged to think about their creativity, their aspirations. So given this, what do I want to know now? What do I want to learn? What questions do I have? What do I wonder about? And helping them to become investigators of their own curiosities. I think that the idea that once they begin to get that, their engagement and their passion is not just how to succeed, but how to be a learner.
Yes. And what advice would you give to parents? How can they teach their children the habits of mind?
Well, at home, I think the habits of mind are just such a natural thing. For example, I think when parents are asking questions to to child, like the child says, oh, mom, everybody wants to go to that movie. And you say, really? Everybody? Can you help me be more specific? Who are you referring to? So that you're getting them to think a little bit more, not just use language like that. If you're saying to them, oh, I don't want to do this because it's too hard. And you can say, as a parent, well, tell me a little bit about what's hard about it. What makes that feel hard to you? So that you're always questioning as a parent rather than just jumping in and assuming you understand. And that you're really getting the child to begin to say, here's what I'm puzzling over. Here's what I'm worrying about. Here's what I really want to do. And also taking them to, there's nothing like taking them out and walking with them, showing them things, giving them the opportunity to experience the world, encouraging them to ask questions, and encouraging them to find out where they can find the answers. So it all sounds simple. It's not simple. It's a different kind of parenting. It's really one in which your job is to not only help them to be disciplined and learn the routines of your culture, but to also explore what they can learn on their own.
Yes, definitely. I agree. It's the modeling behavior of parents that children really learn through.
Yes.
All right. I am saying that our country is more of an agriculture based country, and more than half of our population is directly or indirectly linked to agriculture. So, in terms of that, and even vocational studies, So, what is the future of vocational studies, vocational education in this world, in this current era? What is the importance?
The importance of agricultural learning, are you saying?
Uh, Agricultural as well as vocational education.
So, vocational education, in terms of how do you really learn how to do the kinds of vocations that are available in Pakistan, for example?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what I think we're saying here is that, again, I think that the idea that you learn the skills and that you learn how to work in that way, but that you don't forget that you also learn how to use your mind. So you begin to think about things and you begin to say, are there opportunities for me, even though I'm doing the physical work of agriculture and I'm learning about it and I learn, is there some new invention that I could come up with? Is there some way to make this work simpler? Is there a way to make it more efficient? Is there a way that I could do something that would help other people? Is there a way that I can come up with something that's good for my community? In other words, there's always an opening for thinking in new ways and trying to be socially responsible, trying to be understanding the agriculture of your country and how it fits in a global sense. Like, where does your food get exported to? Where do you get food that comes to you? How do you think about the what you're growing and how it works? And what is the effect of climate change? And how do you begin to think about that? So there are so many things that you can do that make vocational education really something that's more meaningful than just skill building. And I guess that's what I would think about.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Bena. And also, I would like to ask you, how can we train teachers of developing countries?
Well, I think the best way is online, obviously, just as we're doing, but maybe with a better connection.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of online learning, and actually, if you're interested, we have online learning with Habits of Mind, which you would be able to have people take those classes, and they're very easy to obtain. They're not terribly expensive for our dollars, and it would be an opportunity for teachers to get some training in a couple of areas. If you'd like, I could help you to be in touch with the company that does this, and you might talk about whether that would be something that people would want. In our email, I will email you a link to that.
All right. Thank you so much. That would be great, Bena. And thank you once again for giving me your precious time. I am really honored and I'm so thankful. It was wonderful. And I'll definitely get in touch with you again. Thank you.
Okay, good luck to you and good luck to all that you're doing.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.